Let's just talk this through. She pleaded. You don't understand. I screamed, trying to ignore the way my voice made Bella flinch. He's a tracker. Alice, did you see that? He's a tracker. Whoa, new rules apply. Emmett added, only just beginning to see the gravity of the situation. Alice's mind quickly filled with rage. I never wanted to use my visions against you, but so help me I will tell her everything. Pull over. Edward, she said too calmly, considering the threat she'd just made to me. I continued to increase our speed. 121. What do you think Bella would do then? If she knew this would end in either her dying, or her being changed? Do you think she would run? Or do you think she'd be all too eager to get on with it? She knows as well as we all do that you won't let her die. Do it. Edward, she repeated. Listen to me, Alice. I saw his mind. Tracking is his passion, his obsession, and he wants her. Alice, her, specifically. I roared, willing her to understand that one of her visions was not necessarily more certain than the other. If he somehow got to her and did more damage than even vampire venom could mend. He begins the hunt tonight. I said, not letting myself finish the thought and not taking my foot off the gas. He doesn't know where. How long do you think it will take him to cross her scent in town? His plan was already set before the words were out of Lauren's mouth. I heard Bella's sharp intake of breath and instantly regretting having said the words aloud. She'd been so focused on what her disappearance would mean for my family she must not have had time to think about her father's own safety. Charlie, you can't leave him there. You can't leave him, she screamed, finally realizing what I'd known from the moment we left the field. The tracker would go to her house. He'd find it quickly. It was possible he already had. Laurent had promised not to hunt on our land, but James clearly felt no loyalty to him anymore. Hearing her anguish and thinking through what Alice had said, my foot backed off the gas though I kept driving, still staring straight ahead. If we can find a way to keep Charlie safe, she'll be much more willing to cooperate. Alice thought calmly, then added aloud. Let's just look at our options for a minute. I released my foot from the gas, listened for a moment while Emmett thought of every possible way to take the weak, ridiculous excuse for a vampire down. Then slammed on the brakes. There are no other options, I said through clenched teeth. I'm not leaving Charlie, Bella screamed. I fought the urge to turn around and try to comfort her, though I knew there was only one thing she wanted, and I couldn't give that to her. We have to take her back, Emmett said. Whatever Alice is thinking. You know she's right. She does have a bit of insight into the situation. No, he's no match for us. Edward. He won't be able to touch her. He'll wait. I can wait too. He smiled. It'll be fun. Like a vampire stakeout. I mean, why does Bella have to be the one to leave? Me and Jazz can drag James out of the country. We were just talking about how long it's been since we took a nice, long run together. You didn't see. You don't understand. I groaned, hating his nonchalance. Once he commits to a hunt, he's unshakable. We'd have to kill him. That's an option. He smiled. Just say the word and it's done. You won't even have to get your hands dirty. And the female, she's with him. If it turns into a fight, the leader will go with them, too. 122. There are enough of us, he said, though his voice was now bordering on sarcastic. I was trying too hard. Emmett knew as well as I did that this wasn't about my family's safety. Of course the nomads were outnumbered, and if it came down to a fight I was sure we would win. Still, the endless streams of what-ifs kept playing out in my mind. One wrong move on our part, one moment of being too distracted by the fight, and he could get to her. I knew as well as any that 1 second is all it would take to change everything. There's another option, Alice whispered, stubborn as always. James won't touch her if she's already been bitten. It would take all the fun right out of his game. There is no other option. I screamed, her expression unchanging. She knew that was not a choice I would make willingly. Even if Bella were dying, I didn't know how I could bring myself to damn her to this miserable existence, even if one wretched part of me wanted it more than anything. Bella. Forever. Does anyone want to hear my plan? Bella said, interrupting the most peaceful thought I'd had since the whole ordeal had begun. No, I snapped, though the anger was only toward myself. Don't yell at her just because you don't like what her future looks like. Or because you do like it but can't admit it to yourself. Okay, maybe the anger was a little bit toward Alice too. Listen, Bella said, trying her best to sound relaxed. You take me back. No, I mumbled reflexively, though I knew she wasn't finished. You take me back. She repeated, anger and frustration returning to her tone. I tell my dad I want to go home to Phoenix. I pack my bags. We wait till this tracker is watching, and then we run. He'll follow us and leave Charlie alone. Charlie won't call the FBI on your family. Then you can take me any damned place you want. All three of us watched her, speechless at how rationally she was thinking given the circumstances. For a moment, even Alice and Emmett's minds were silent. It was the quietest moment I'd had in decades. It's not a bad idea, really. Emmett finally said. It might work. Alice added. And I'll be keeping a very close watch on Bella's future, so I'll know if there's cause for concern. And we simply can't leave her father unprotected. You know that. All of them stared at me. Alice and Emmett pleading silently to pull myself together and think of the bigger picture. Bella's thoughts were as painfully silent as ever, but her eyes begged me to comply. It's too dangerous. I don't want him within 100 miles of her. I said, though I could feel my resolve crumbling with every passing second of Bella's stare. Edward, he's not getting through us. Emmett assured me. He punctuated the sentiment by letting me see a dozen or so different images of he and Jasper tearing James into pieces. Alice quickly let the scenario play out through her mind, then very confidently told me. I don't see him attacking. He'll try to wait for us to leave her alone. It won't take long for him to realize that's not going to happen. I growled, abhorring the thought of leaving Bella's side for 1 second with a monster like James after her. 123, I demand that you take me home. Bella said in her most confident voice. It might have worked had I not been so in tune with the changed rhythm of her breathing, so aware of the way her heart was racing. Bella was scared and she was trying to be brave. For me. For Charlie. For all of us. I shut my eyes tightly and tried to silence the voice in my head reminding me it was all my fault. Please, she added quietly. And somehow that final plea. The one that might have been her final attempt before giving in and letting me take her far away, was the one that broke my resolve. You're leaving tonight, whether the tracker sees or not. I whispered, utterly defeated. You tell Charlie that you can't stand another minute in Forks. Tell him whatever story works. Pack the first things your hands touch, and then get in your truck. I don't care what he says to you. You have 15 minutes. Do you hear me? 15 minutes from the time you cross the doorstep. I didn't pause to wait for her response. I knew it was what she wanted, what she needed, and I knew I had to give it to her. Alice would watch her future. I would listen to the tracker's every thought, and Emmett would plan various ways to rip the creature to shreds if he took one step toward the house. He was right. There was no getting through us, and Bella could have the peace of mind knowing her father was safe. Emmett, I heard her mutter from the back. I looked in the mirror to see him releasing her from his iron hold, and allowed myself a brief smile as she settled comfortably back into her seat. Oh, sorry, he said, grinning infinitesimally at me. You're right, man. The warm is totally nice. Okay, smile gone. If I weren't so relieved by how quickly Bella had calmed down. I might have snapped at him. I listened carefully as Alice's mind continued playing out possible outcomes for the night. She saw nothing to indicate that there would be any problems getting Bella safely in and out of Charlie's, and back to our house. From there she thought of everything from running Bella on foot out of the country, to booking multiple flights, then walking her around every gate in the airport to confuse the scent. Though she couldn't see specifically how James would react to any tricks we might try to play, there was one thing that was certain. James was relentless. He would not give up no matter where we ran. Never happy to resort to violence. I tried not to dwell too long on what that meant. James would not be allowed to walk away from this fight. A few more silent minutes passed and I calmed myself by counting Bella's breaths and heartbeats. I'll never let anything or anyone take those sounds away from me. This is how it's going to happen. I finally said, knowing we were only minutes from her house. When we get to the house, if the tracker is not there, I will walk her to the door. Then she has 15 minutes. I quickly glanced back at Bella to make sure she understood what I was saying. She'd have to be fast and creative in her story. We both knew Charlie wasn't going to let her go easily. Emmett, I continued, grateful for his strength and determination. You take the outside of the house. Alice, you get the truck. I'll be inside as long as she is. After she's out, you two can take the Jeep home and tell Carlisle, no way. Emmett said firmly. I'm with you. If he attacks, I'm not letting you fight him alone. Think it through. Emmett. I don't know how long I'll be gone, until we know how far this is going to go. I'm with you. You can be a real idiot sometimes, but you're my brother and I will fight beside you until this is over. 124. I let out a long sigh, knowing there was no point in arguing with him. It wasn't exactly like I could force him to let us go alone, and truthfully I knew I'd feel better having him with us. He'd never let anyone touch Bella. If the tracker is there, we keep driving. I added, trying to cover my bases. We're going to make it there before him. Alice said, showing me the image in her mind for confirmation. What are we going to do with the Jeep? Great. She wanted to go with us too. Did she and Emmett really think I was that incapable of defending myself? I'd barely talked myself into letting Emmett come along. I certainly wasn't dragging Alice into this. As much as I knew she could take care of herself. Jasper would never forgive me for allowing her into a fight while he stayed in Forks playing Watch Vampire for Charlie. Even though she's virtually indestructible, he worried about Alice's safety as much as I worried about Bella's. You're driving it home. I answered, hoping she could hear the finality in my voice. No, I'm not, she said sweetly, again flooding me with images of her hovering protectively around Bella. I love you both, and I'm not going anywhere. I muttered things that were definitely not appropriate for Bella to hear as Alice kept smiling her innocent and unyielding smile. We can't all fit in my truck, Bella said quietly. I could tell there was more to the sentence, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the rest. She was looking at her feet when she spoke again. I think you should let me go alone. My eyes shot up to the rear-view mirror and her gaze timidly met mine. Bella, please just do this my way, just this once. I begged. I knew she was worried about me and trying to be brave, but now simply wasn't the time. Listen, she said, confidence slowly creeping back into her voice. Charlie's not an imbecile. If you're not in town tomorrow, he's going to get suspicious. That's irrelevant. We'll make sure he's safe, and that's all that matters. Then what about this tracker? He saw the way you acted tonight. He's going to think you're with me, wherever you are. I watched as Emmett glanced at Bella with the strangest look of pride. Being chased by an obsessed vampire killer, and all she can think about is keeping you and Charlie safe, and not messing things up for our family. Amazing, Edward, listen to her. He added aloud, still looking at Bella like he was in awe. I think she's right. Yes, she is. Alice said. This time thankfully not backing her words up with another rush of visions. They were starting to feel like a constant exclamation point to every word she spoke. I can't do that, I said bleakly, not able to bear the thought of leaving her side when I knew what was pursuing her. I couldn't fathom the torture of not knowing where she was, not ever being certain of her safety. She was always so afraid of my leaving her, but I was every bit as afraid of us being separated as she was. Emmett should stay, too. He definitely got an eyeful of Emmett, she said. Ignoring my words and my expression. What? Emmett asked, as shocked as I was that she would send her strongest protector with me instead of keeping him with her. 125, you'll get a better crack at him if you stay. Alice reminded me. Of course he'll assume you two are together. She could be halfway across the country by the time he realizes you stayed in Forks by yourself. You think I should let her go alone? I snapped, glaring at Alice in frustration and anger, though something in me knew I'd already lost the battle. It was 3 against 1. Of course not, Alice said softly, trying to calm me down as my breathing sped up and my hands clenched into fists around the steering wheel. Jasper and I will take her. I can't do that, I muttered. Then Alice filled my mind with pictures of Bella safe and perfect, hundreds of miles away from any danger. I felt a crushing pain at the thought of being so far away from her, but we all knew that when it came down to it, my feelings of loneliness weren't really important at all. If Bella was safe, I could get through anything. Hang out here for a week, Bella said calmly. Too long. My mind instantly fought against the idea of not being beside her. A few days, she said, taking in my expression. Let Charlie see you haven't kidnapped me, and led this James on a wild goose chase. Make sure he's completely off my trail. Then come and meet me. Take a roundabout route, of course, and then Jasper and Alice can go home. Against my will, a vision of my own flashed through my mind. I could see it all too clearly. Bella and I alone, together. Traveling the world. We'd lead James far away from her scent, but we could never go back to Forks. Assuming we didn't kill him. We'd always worry that he would be there waiting for our return. I wanted so much for Bella to have a normal life, to make sure that her being with me did not make her give up anything. Still, the thought of having her all to myself, being able to show her the world and forever bask in her presence. Meet you where? I found myself asking, far too attached to the future that was racing through my thoughts. Phoenix. Of course, no. He'll hear that's where you're going. I said, quickly snapping myself back into the present. There was no time for idle fantasies about a life that probably wasn't possible for us anyway. She'd never be willing to leave everything behind for me, and it would be selfish of me to ask that she do such a thing. Bella was going to live her life, her human life like the rest of her friends and family. I would not take that away from her. And you'll make it look like that's a ruse, obviously. He'll know that we'll know that he's listening. He'll never believe I'm actually going where I say I am going. She said it with such confidence. I actually felt a little silly for not thinking of it myself. She's diabolical. Emmett laughed, still quite proud of her for thinking so clearly in the midst of everything. And if that doesn't work, there are several million people in Phoenix, she told me, still calmer than I thought she should be. Her heart wasn't even racing. Apparently the idea of fleeing across multiple states to evade a sadistic vampire tracker wasn't particularly upsetting to her. Not like, oh, running with me or meeting my family. It's not that hard to find a phone book. I added, though I was figuring out that she had an answer for everything. I won't go home. 126. Oh, why go back to Phoenix if not to be with her mother? I'm quite old enough to get my own place, Edward, we'll be with her. Alice added, hearing the low growl that was building in my chest at the idea of Bella off on her own. What are you going to do in Phoenix? I spat at her. Stay indoors. She smiled. I kind of like it. Emmett added with a grin. Send the girls on a nice little vacation while you and I take care of James. He won't know what hit him. Shut up. Emmett, look, if we try to take him down while she's still around. There's a much better chance that someone will get hurt, she'll get hurt, or you will, trying to protect her. Now, if we get him alone. He was smiling again as he painted the rest of the picture for me, far too graphic for Bella to hear. The specifics of killing a vampire were not something any of us wanted her to think about in any amount of detail. As we approached the house, I heard Bella's heart finally start to speed up. She was forcing herself to take slow, calming breaths, but I knew she was afraid. Bella, I said gently, suddenly realizing my voice had probably been offering her little comfort during our drive. I hated knowing how harsh I'd sounded. I was just so terrified of losing her. If you let anything happen to yourself, anything at all, I'm holding you personally responsible. Do you understand that? Yes, she said, her voice strained. Of course it was unfair to use her guilt tendencies against her, but I couldn't help feeling that she would be more careful if she believed she was doing it for my sake. She had to know by now. I just wouldn't survive if I lost her. Can Jasper handle this? I asked Alice. She growled, too low for Bella to hear. I'd started to feel more comfortable with his being around her, seeing as most of his energy was being spent making fun of me, but I still had to be sure. Give him some credit. Edward. He's been doing very, very well, all things considered. Relax. I'll keep an eye on the situation and make sure he hunts if there's even a chance his control is wavering. Can you handle this? I asked, bracing myself for her reaction. This time she didn't hold back, and I could hear Bella's breath catch, her heart pounding in her chest. How dare you insinuate, she began, but I cut her off with a quick smile. But keep your opinions to yourself. I reminded her, then watched as her expression shifted, back to a demure smile. Oh, don't worry. She'll figure all of that out on her own, when the time is right. 127, Goodbyes EPOV. We drove in silence the rest of the way to Bella's house. Even Emmett and Alice's minds were quiet, focused intently on listening for any sign of James. We all peered into the shadows or the surrounding forest, watching closely but seeing nothing unusual. I took a deep breath as we pulled up behind Bella's truck, and I let her lovely scent momentarily block out all the fear I was feeling. For 1 second. There was no danger. There was only Bella and I and the love we felt for each other. Far too soon. Alice pulled me from my peaceful moment of delusion. He hasn't tracked her here yet. You two have a little time, but be careful. Stick to the plan. He's not here. Let's go. I told Bella, wishing I could have basked in her presence just a little longer. Though I refused to think the worst, something in me knew she and I would be separated longer than I was willing to think about. I didn't know exactly how or in what way, but I was certain the next few days were going to change everything. Emmett quickly released Bella's harness, smiling at her with all the love of a brother toward his little sister. It really was amazing how quickly she had won her way into all of their hearts. All except for Rosalie, of course, but I didn't let myself dwell on that. Rose basically only knew how to love herself. Even Emmett came second to her selfishness. Don't worry, Bella, Emmett said kindly. We'll take care of things here quickly. If that stupid tracker would just hurry up and get here, maybe we could have him taken care of before Bella even crosses the state line. I tried to smile to show him something at least resembling confidence, but the sight of Bella's tears stopped it before it began. She looked so small, so fragile, looking up at Emmett with her eyes filling up. When she glanced at Alice, they poured down her cheek. I knew it would only hurt her more if she caught my gaze. I couldn't even imagine what I must look like. If it were possible for me to cry, my eyes would have been a perfect mirror of hers. I was certain she would be able to feel that, and it would only bring her more tears, so I forced myself to turn away. 128, Alice. Emmett, I said, keeping my eyes locked on the darkness around us as they quickly left the jeep. Everything is going to be fine. Alice thought gently. You guys hurry up. It's time to get this thing started. Emmett added, though there was something tainting his usual energy and enthusiasm. If I didn't know better, I'd have wondered if he wasn't a little nervous himself about what was coming. As they ran soundlessly away from us, I raced around to Bella's door, helping her down from the massive jeep. Could it really have been only a few hours ago that I'd lifted her up into her seat, laughing at her dismay as she fumbled with the harness? It all seemed so trivial, and I wondered how I could have wasted 1 second of our time together. We should have just stayed home, wrapped up in each other's arms in our perfect little world. With that thought, I pulled her close to me, her arm entwining with mine as we walked to the door. Fearing the night in a way I never had before, I walked quickly, though I would have given anything to simply stop time. She was pressed so tightly to me I could feel her heart racing against my chest, and I wished I could have taken the time to count the beats, savor the way the damp night air changed and enhanced her scent. 15 minutes. I said softly, though I wasn't sure if I was reminding her or myself. I can do this, she said through her still flowing tears. When we reached the porch, she startled me by reaching both of her hands up to my face. I could feel her warmth radiating through every inch of me, and for a moment I couldn't fathom how I was going to be able to let her go. As her eyes blazed into mine, I wanted to forget the plan, forget how carefully orchestrated every minute of the night was. I wanted to grab hold of her and run, faster than I'd ever moved before, and take her away from all of it. Her stare only intensified when she finally spoke to me. I love you, she whispered, her fingers caressing my face. I will always love you, no matter what happens now. My chest tightened as I put aside my selfish desire to run away with her. Whatever it takes to make her safe. I reminded myself. Nothing is going to happen to you. Bella, just follow the plan, okay? Keep Charlie safe for me. He's not going to like me very much after this, and I want to have the chance to apologize later. I barely heard her as I caught the faint sound of movement in the trees, though the air was still. Get inside. Bella. We have to hurry. I pleaded. As much as I wished I could stay there and prolong our moment together. I knew every second we waited was adding to the danger threatening her. One more thing, she said, the fire in her eyes burning wildly. Don't listen to another word I say tonight. She stood on her tiptoes and closed the small gap between us, kissing me fiercely for a split second. I wanted to respond, but before I knew what was happening, she was violently throwing the door open. Go away. Edward, she screamed, slamming the door in my face. It took me a moment to catch up with her plan, but as I heard the strangest mix of concern and relief float through Charlie's mind. I understood. She was making sure he wouldn't suspect I had taken her away. She was protecting me, and amidst the chaos I felt myself smile. 129. I flew around the side of the house and up to her window the way I had for so many nights. A wave of something near nostalgia washed through me as I stepped inside her room. What used to be my calm sanctuary now set the scene for panic and despair. "Leave me alone." I heard Bella scream as she scrambled up the stairs and through the door. She didn't look at me as she began fumbling around for her bag. "Bella, are you okay? What's going on?" Charlie yelled, knocking on her locked door. "I'm going home," she screamed, and I looked at her just in time to see the fresh wave of tears that were streaming down her face. "Did he hurt you?" Charlie asked. "No," she cried, obviously horrified that he had come to that conclusion. Finally she turned to face me and determination had started to replace the agony in her eyes. I was rummaging through her dresser, tossing her clothes to pack. I was relieved to see she still had a few warm weather items amid the sea of sweaters and long-sleeved shirts that were necessary for Northwest weather. I knew Arizona would be hot and I didn't want her to be uncomfortable. Not that I doubted Alice's ability to shop, even in the most dire of circumstances. "Did he break up with you?" Charlie asked, still trying to figure out Bella's behavior. "No," she yelled again while packing the items I threw to her. "What happened?" "Bella, I broke up with him," she screamed while she tugged on her bag's zipper. I could hear the change in her heart and see the pain in her eyes at having uttered the words, false as they were. She was losing her resolve and I wondered if it was making it more difficult to lie to Charlie with me there listening to it all. I reached over to close the bag and placed it over her arm. "I'll be in the truck, go," I told her, urging her to finish what she had started. I jumped out the window, scanning every inch of darkness as I made my way to Bella's truck. Though I could still hear the argument clearly, I forced myself to block out her words. Instead, I listened intently to the sounds of the forest. I made myself hear every cracking twig, every rustle of tress in the soft breeze, constantly ascertaining whether there was something unfamiliar in the always familiar sounds of nature. Though I was trying to give her privacy, I couldn't help tuning in again when I heard a very startled "What?" At the same time my head snapped in the direction of the house. I heard the sound I'd been terrified of hearing. A soft, sinister laugh was coming from the trees. Before I had time to panic, I heard Alice's voice in the distance. "We're here," she called, alerting both James and I to her and Emmett's presence. James growled into the darkness, relieved by the knowledge that he wouldn't attack when he knew he was outnumbered. I turned my attention back to Bella and Charlie. "She called while you were out," Charlie said, and I assumed he was talking about her mother. "Things aren't going so well in Florida, and if Phil doesn't get signed by the end of the week, they're going back to Arizona." The assistant coach of the Sidewinders said they might have a spot for another shortstop. There was another dry laugh. "Arizona girl. Huh. Not exactly conducive to vampire life." I snarled into the stillness, hoping the threat would keep James at bay a little while longer. He knew Alice and Emmett were close by, and I was sure he knew I was there too. I'd made it fairly 130 obvious wherever Bella was, I would be. It was the basis of our entire inane plan. Still, I readied myself to attack if he took one step from his hiding place. As Alice and Emmett came into view, we all growled menacingly into the trees. Wow, she really does have her own little army of vampires. I don't see what all the commotion is about, but at least it makes things interesting. It was about time for a little sport. "I have a key," I heard Bella murmur as she started to open the door. I turned my attention back to her while still listening intently as the upcoming hunt consumed James's every thought. "Just let me go, Charlie. It didn't work out, okay? I really hate forks." I took my eyes off of Bella just long enough to see the pained expression on Charlie's face. His thoughts were even more jumbled than usual. There were still pleas trying to make her stay, and confusion as to what had really caused the scene. Yet there was one overwhelming emotion that clouded everything else. Defeat. My whole body tensed as I watched Bella run toward the truck. I listened as James growled softly from the trees, but he made no move to attack. He knew I was waiting and that he was being watched closely. Bella tossed her bag in the back and climbed in, her face stained with tears though for the moment her eyes were dry. "I'll call you tomorrow," she called to Charlie as she started the engine.